It's a little different, more than a little different. It's very different. Conducting a weekend like this, a Vyasa Puja celebration. But we'll make the best use of it because we're still together, virtually at least. I decided to speak this evening about Srila Prabhupada and a life of devotion to His divine grace. And I thought a nice way to start is this standard prayer that we all say. It's the very, very beginning of our Mangala Charana. We can say it together. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjala Salakaya Chakshod Admiritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So before going into the translation, I want to focus on two words. One that I had to look up because it's in the word for the verse. Shalakaya means by a medical instrument called a shalaka. In case you didn't know, shalaka is used to apply medical ointment to eyes afflicted with cataracts. So ointment, that's anjana, and there's gyananjana that the spiritual master applies with the shalaka. And I want to spend a little bit of time also this final word, namaha, and it's going to connect with a topic we're going to discuss tomorrow morning. There is some continuity in all of this by design. So here's some images from the from Google, what a shalaka is. That point apparently is used to administer the ointment that's used medically for people that had cataracts. And something that I find interesting is, must be a very old instrument. I mean, Ayurvedic medicine, because it's a Sanskrit term, shalaka, they must have had cataracts. They must have had some way of addressing cataracts with a shalaka. And the word namaha, we use all the time. It's nice to not just say it, but know what it means. Ma, this is taken directly from Bhakti Sandarbha, Jiva Goswami's Bhakti Sandarbha, as you can see, Anucheda 236. And he's quoting from Padma Purana. What is the meaning of namaha? Ma represents ahankar, and na represents negation of ahankar. Thus, by uttering namaha, one negates one's independent attitude. The jiva is dependent on the Lord. He lives with dependence. Therefore, one should completely reject the idea of accomplishing by one's own capacity. Nothing is left to be accomplished by the ability of the Lord. That's an interesting translation, isn't it? Nothing is left to be accomplished by the ability of the Lord. I guess that means when the Lord is doing something, there's nothing left for you to do. Everything's accomplished. If you're acting as the instrument without false ego, then you don't have to accomplish anything. You just have to be the instrument. Consigning one's body to the Lord, one should serve Him. So normally, a very simple rendering is, I offer my obeisances unto namaha. But going a little more deeply into what namaha means, it's negation of false ego, or negation of one's independent attitude, or working, living in a dependent mood. You still do, you still work, you still act, but not resting upon your own capacity, but resting upon the Lord's ability. And another term that's used in the translation is torchlight, the torchlight of knowledge. Ajnana timara. Ajnana is ignorance, and timara is the darkness of ignorance. And ajnana timarandasya is blinded by the darkness of ignorance. Most of us, most of the people who are in ignorance, because of the influence of ignorance, don't realize that they're in ignorance. And it takes this torchlight. There's an image from the computer, from Google, of a torch. The torch brings light into darkness. And ajnana timarandasya, the darkness of our material existence, we didn't even know until the spiritual master came along and opened our eyes, which were in the darkness of ignorance, with the torchlight of knowledge. So here's Prabhupada's translation. I offer my respectful obeisances to my spiritual master, who has opened my eyes, which were blinded by the darkness of ignorance, with the torchlight of knowledge. Now there's a very similar verse, as you probably know, in Bhagavad-Gita, the last of the Chaturasloki verses, where Krishna speaks of the function of Supersoul, Tesham evanukampartam. Tesham is unto those who, so Tesham is referring to the previous verse, those who are constantly engaged in my devotional service. Krishna gives knowledge by which they can come to me. Then, in addition, to show special mercy, evanukampartam, aham ajnanajam tamaha. Aham, I, ajnana jam tamaha, with the lamp, jnana deepena, there's a jnana deepa, with the torch of knowledge or lamp of knowledge, I destroy the darkness, tamaha, born of ignorance, nashiyami. So notice the similarity between the prayer to the spiritual master and what Krishna is saying that he does from the position of Supersoul. It's a special mercy gesture. And that is to say, the spiritual master is the external representative of Supersoul. Not the Supersoul, but the external representative. Kintu prabhorya priya eva tasya is very dear to the Supreme Lord, Prabhu. Kintu prabhorya priya eva tasya. Very dear to Krishna. And therefore he serves in the same capacity, or similar capacity, as carrying the torchlight of knowledge. So the knowledge, jnana, source, is the Supreme Person. And when one recognizes that I was in darkness of ignorance, and now by this special mercy, with the torchlight of knowledge, I now can have some understanding of who I am, what is illusion and what is reality, transcendental reality, and the transcendental picture of what illusion is, And so this begins. This is the means by which the seed of bhakti begins to sprout. And that seed of bhakti is already within, but the seed of bhakti begins to sprout when one gets the association of the representative of Krishna, Krishna's external representation of the supersoul within, the manifestation of Krishna, or because there can be many such persons who represent Krishna. And when that awakening takes place, there's something, a natural something that one feels. One of the natural somethings that one feels is gratitude. Not just, gee, thank you, kind of conventional gratitude, but something that's more deep and profound. And that seed of gratitude, something that many of you who are listening have heard me say many, many times, gratitude is the seed of love. The seed of gratitude is having this torchlight of knowledge dispel the darkness of ignorance so that we can start to understand who we are. There's a very nice description of this, beginning the seed that awakens faith, this preliminary faith that's already there, adau shraddha, it's in the heart already, and by spiritual sound vibration, it starts to transform. Now what we're going to see is some words of Jiva Goswami's commentary from Bhakti Sandarbha. So he's describing the unfolding of bhakti. It's philosophical, but each of us have to some degree experienced this. Shraddha, or faith, which develops for bhakti, is endowed with ruchi, or taste. And this Shraddha is none other than the seed of the Bhakti Lata, or creeper of devotion, which is sown in the heart of the Jiva. Now, a little detail is it A or B? A, we receive the seed of Bhakti that wasn't already there, and it's sown in the heart. Or B, there's already Prema Bhakti, and the seed of Prema Bhakti begins to awaken when we hear a spiritual sound vibration from a Bhakti source. A or B? Well, one can look at it either way, for sure. Within every soul, not just human beings or pious human beings, but within every soul, there is a constitutional relationship with Krishna, of his eternal servant. And in the mature stage, the seed stage is one thing, the mature stage is love for Krishna. It's already there in a seed stage. So the sowing of that seed is the awakening of that faith for bhakti. So you can look at it this way, you can look at it that way. It amounts to the same thing. It's already there, it has to be awakened. And specifically, Jiva Goswami is expressing here that faith for bhakti, already there's some ruchi, there's some taste. And he goes on, only when the Shraddha, which is endowed with ruchi for bhakti, culminates in the symptoms of bhakti. So that is to say, we're going to have, according to Bhagavad-Gita, we're going to have faith in something because it's intrinsic to the soul. So if one doesn't have faith in Krishna, one will have faith according to the modes of nature. That's Divisions of Faith chapter, Bhagavad-Gita. But specifically, Shraddha for bhakti. Shraddha for bhakti. Included in it is ruchi. There's some eagerness, some taste, some enthusiasm to experience and go further. Then the symptoms of bhakti. There's 26 characteristics of a devotee. There's unlimited, but there's 26 principal ones. And Krishna Eka Shanana is the principal one. And what awakens that Krishna Eka Shanana, that's the bhakti, or as this is called Sharanapati. Sharanapati means attaining. Sharana, attaining surrender to Krishna, happens because of the spiritual master. That's Rupa Goswami's teachings. Now this is Jiva Goswami's teachings that don't differ, just explaining from a different perspective. So what I'm attempting to do is rely on our scriptural authorities and our great acharyas to understand what the awakening of a life of devotion to His divine grace is like, what's happening. There's darkness of ignorance. There's the compassionate Srila Prabhupada, who wanted people to not have to suffer unnecessarily, and so he came with the torchlight of knowledge in various forms, with the eagerness to have people open their eyes and understand who they are and understand what's reality and what's illusion. And then some gratitude awakens when one recognizes, wow, we probably all have our moments, like, special transitional moments. It's very common, where we realize that, wow, experience, and that there's some deeper sense, not just a superficial, but a deeper sense of gratitude as to what we have received. I had mine, and I've narrated the story. I don't think it's so good to go into it this evening. But at a certain point, I recognized my life has changed. I now have an opportunity to become who I really am. And I felt very grateful. I have profound gratitude. And with that profound gratitude was immediately, not later, immediately, I must do something. Gratitude is not just to say thanks. Gratitude is, we had this whole seminar on gratitude during the winter retreat. It's you do something. Out of gratitude, you want to do something, not exactly pay back as if you have a debt, although it is indebtedness, it's a debt you can never pay back, but you want to give back to that source. And one of the best ways to give back to the source that light has come from or mercy has come from is to receive it fully, and then in turn manifest the symptoms of one who has received it fully. That is, including, as one matures, to extend the same to others. But we're at the seed stage here, the sprouting of the seed, and this is the Sharana Apati, attaining shelter. So let's do it again, slowly. A life of devotion to Srila Prabhupada, for me, and for anyone that's part of ISKCON, because we received his mercy for sure, is the darkness of ignorance, darkness born of ignorance, was counteracted with the shining lamp or the torch of knowledge, the torchlight of knowledge. With that, some sense of gratitude, having received something, and by the awakening of what you do instead of a life of darkness or illusion is a life of bhakti. And then the symptoms of bhakti are sharanapati, further taking shelter, and nourished by the same method, by the process of hearing transcendental sounds from our founder Acharya, which is something that we're all doing by carefully reading the Bhaktivedanta purports for Bhagavad-Gita and the Bhakti Shastri texts, and then in turn Srimad Bhagavatam and so on. It's watering that seed that you see in the image here, so it will start to grow. Jiva Goswami explains that Shraddha, this faith, is not a limit bhakti, but it's an attribute for the adhikar of Shuddha Bhakti. We're going to be speaking, one class is going to be dedicated to the topic of moving from Abhas Bhakti to Shuddha Bhakti, because we're in the Abhas Bhakti stage. But this is saying an qualification, that's adhikar, means qualification for Shuddha Bhakti, needs a certain attribute, and that's faith. Faith is not a limit bhakti, but an attribute for the adhikar for Shuddha Bhakti. Very important. For one to have a life, whole lifetime dedicated to the service of Srila Prabhupada, which means, Prabhupada means his followers and the whole Sangha of Vaishnavas, which is something his spiritual master wanted, and someone can say it comes from him too, and so forth. And as that faith grows and is nourished by the same hearing and chanting process, then the creeper of bhakti begins to grow. There's something about creepers, here's an image of a creeper, it clings to something. Unlike a tree or some other plant, creepers are specific. A feature of them is they cling to something, and that helps them grow. And the creeper of devotion clings to something. It clings to the sound vibration and the person who is generating that sound vibration. Those who are representing Krishna, who, as he says in Bhagavad-Gita, he is giving that ajnana jam tamaha. He's personally doing this. And he does personally through his representatives. And so the clinging is the holy name, and the teachings, and the teachers. Ultimately, in the mature stage, it's the lotus feet of Krishna. That's what our scriptures teach, that's what our acharyas teach. The goal is the lotus feet of Krishna. And then, so gradually from this Shraddha comes this that we mentioned, Jiva Goswami mentioned, Ruchi. And the taste for the name, as a progress, an indicator of progress, is the taste for the name is growing. And one of the ways of indicating that the taste for the name is growing is the taste for other is diminishing. Seeking happiness in the temporary. We're going to be discussing that on a dedicated class to Asat Trishna. In the class that's going from Abhas Bhakti to Shuddha Bhakti. Detachment from asat, for hankering or thirst for the temporary. Instead, like the creeper, clinging to that which is spiritual, the name, the spiritual teaching, the spiritual teachers, sadhu sangha. And that's the way by which the bhakti creeper grows. Now, as the bhakti creeper grows, we've all had the experience. It's not always smooth sailing. During recently, because it was the disappearance day we honor the disappearance day of Bhaktisiddhanta. Here's one quote from Bhaktisiddhanta, one amongst many. God is shelter for all. He sends many obstacles and inconveniences to those who wish for shelter unto him in order to test their ardor and steadiness. Now, gee, he could just be nice and make everything really, just like smooth. So why is he sending many obstacles and inconveniences? So there's a purpose. It makes our shelter taking stronger, and it makes the attachment to the temporary slacken. It's purposeful. It's special mercy. We all have heard this many times. Hari, one of the principal names by which we address the personality of Godhead. Hari Nam, names of Hari. So Hari means he who takes away. So what is he taking away? He shouldn't take things away. He should give things. But what's taken away is that which is inauspicious, and in place of the inauspicious is auspicious. But the inauspicious auspicious is not just on the material side of auspicious, inauspicious. It's the spiritual. So as we're going along, living a life of dedication to Srila Prabhupada, we'll find in differing degrees, sometimes a whole bunch at once, and sometimes so many varieties of things. But a faithful person understands what is the intention. It's a kindness. Prabhupada speaks about that in his life. We'll mention two things. On the disappearance day of Bhaktisiddhanta, we played this little 4-minute audio clip of Prabhupada speaking on the occasion of his spiritual master's departure. And he described, he was horrified when Bhaktisiddhanta repeatedly would appear to him in dreams and tell him, please help me. Appealing again and again. What? Give up family life? Horrible. How am I to do this? I mean, he wasn't saying it tongue-in-cheek. He was saying it, that's really what he felt. How am I going to do this? Mission impossible. So how did he go from that to what he became? Unless it's just, we can say, well, it's an eternal associate, it was just a pastime, it was really just a pastime. But even if it's just a pastime, or that he actually underwent the full surrender and letting go, it's this. When he finally accepted sannyas by the insistence of his godbrother, Keshava Maharaj, the very day he was gored by the horns of a cow walking in the street. Oh, thanks a lot. Inconveniences, obstacles, tests, and everything that was involved in his coming and fulfilling the instruction of a spiritual master, obstacle after obstacle. Near death, heart attack, and all those things. And once he got there, living in a condition that's unfit for a civilized person. But he did it for a year, where there wasn't even a toilet, or a kitchen, or a place to take bath. He had to go to Dr. Mishra's apartment to use the toilet and take his bath. I mean, how austere in New York City in the winter, with no money and no anything. So it's very, 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 very difficult. Very difficult. But his steadiness and ardor were being strengthened by those circumstances. So here's an image of some footprints in the sand, and I drew this just to speak about following in the footprints, following in the footsteps, to go from where we are to a whole life of devotion dedicated to Srila Prabhupada. And again, using some of the same language. This is Bhaktisiddhanta's language. One who treads on this path of bhakti finds the path filled with thorns. Who's going to work on a path filled with thorns? Or another one of his terms is fire of ordeal. And it's not like Bhaktisiddhanta didn't experience any of these things. He experienced these things also. Fire of ordeal. In Prabhupada's words in the Bhagavatam, an atmosphere is surcharged with opposition, so you keep going anyway. Atmospheres are charged with opposition. Keep going anyway, because you're following in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada. And then, internal contaminations or anarthas or some unwanted things, and thing after thing after thing, and you continue on the path of bhakti, following in the footsteps of our founder Acharya, just exactly as he did. He followed in the footsteps of Bhaktisiddhanta, and we're following in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada. There's a nice little passage in this biography about Jamuna's life, where she expresses, she didn't write the book, but she expressed one time when she was in a morning walk in London, early in the morning with Srila Prabhupada, like we see here, it's just Prabhupada and Jamuna. So in this particular morning, she was walking behind Prabhupada, and it was fresh dew on tall grass as they were walking through some field or something. And she expresses that I was thinking, wow, this is perfection of life. I can just follow in the footsteps of a pure devotee, literally. So she was trying to put her feet exactly where Prabhupada put his feet, and she couldn't see where he put his feet. Then she looked behind herself, and she could see exactly where she put her feet, because there was marks in the tall grass. So then she got up enough for nerve and asked Prabhupada, how come when you're walking like this, I can't see where your footprints are, but I can see mine? And Prabhupada's immediate reply was, someday you will understand. That's all he said. And I saw a little short video of one devotee in Australia, had almost exactly the same story, with a group and walking directly behind, thinking, wow, walking in the footsteps of pure devotee. This is perfection of life. But then he noticed there's no marks where his footprints were. Now, I don't know this devotee. I know Jamuna, and Jamuna doesn't make stories. And I don't know this other devotee, so I can't say. But for sure, it was a point of amazement. So how do you follow in the footsteps when you can't even see the footsteps? Well, it's a principle, and the lotus feet of the spiritual master are worshipable by the devotee. Some of you may know Kaladri. He tells a very nice story. If you see him, you can ask him. Next time you see him, you can ask him, please tell us the story of making the mold for Prabhupada's lotus feet. Because in all of our temples, at our Chicago temple, for example, right below the Vyasa san, there's this impression of Prabhupada's lotus feet. So what he did is he brought from the Vrindavan a soft clay, very soft clay, and asked Prabhupada's permission when he got to Vrindavan if he could make an impression so they could make molds of this for the world of ISKCON. Prabhupada agreed, and he held Prabhupada's feet one by one in his hands and pressed them firmly into the soft clay so it made an impression. And then when it hardened, they used it to make the impression of Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet. He said it was really thrilling, just holding Prabhupada's feet like that. And when you're following Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet, you're also going to be a follower of Rupa Goswami, because he's a follower of Rupa Goswami. And we are all using his term, Rupanugas. We're followers of Rupa Goswami. And not only we're followers of Rupa Goswami, but all those who were his associates were followers of Rupa Goswami. Here's a very nice verse that you'll find when you visit Ter Kadamba. Ter Kadamba is a place in Vrindavan where there's a grove of Kadamba trees, thus Ter Kadamba. And this is the place where Rupa Goswami spent a lot of time writing Nectar Devotion or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So just above the altar, there's deities of Krishna Balaram there. When you go, you'll see this is written. Adadanas Chanandam Tayar, Idam Yache Punak Punak, Srimad Rupa Padam Boja, Duli Sham Janma Janani. It's written by Raghunath Das Goswami, where he says, taking grass between my teeth, I pray repeatedly that I may become a speck of dust at Sri Rupa Goswami's lotus feet. Janma Janmani, birth after birth. Duli Sham, speck of dust. So this mood of humility in relation to being a follower of Rupa Goswami is what one receives by being a follower of Srila Prabhupada. In the teachings of Rupa Goswami, which are the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, which are the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam, he is teaching to achieve that gift which Lord Chaitanya wanted to give, which is Braja Prem. You become a follower of one of the eternal associates of Vrindavan. One of my godbrothers, Tamahar, said, he was present when Prabhupada was asked, how do we follow one of the eternal associates of Krishna in Vrindavan? And Prabhupada's answer was, I'm a resident of Vrindavan. You follow Srila Prabhupada, you become a follower of Rupa Goswami. You follower of Rupa Goswami, you become a follower of the eternal associates of Krishna in Vrindavan, and you'll attain Braja Prem. And you know, when we were in this darkness of ignorance, we didn't have any idea where this train was going. We just had some wonderful experience of having our eyes open with the torchlight of knowledge. And as we continued, it grew more and more wonderful. A starting place for all of us, or most of us, probably all of us, was the chanting of the holy name, to connect with Krishna through the chanting of the holy name. And it's the beginning, it's the middle, and the end. Now, I did a little research before this evening, and I couldn't find the person who shared this following, but it's, I remember it distinctly. So unfortunately, I can't give the chapter and verse or the actual experience, but in principle, because I thought it was Giriraj Maharaj, but he said, I don't recall this particular expression, but it sounds right. So Prabhupada was chanting with one devotee early in the morning, and they were chanting together very vigorously. All of a sudden, Prabhupada stopped, And he lifted his beads from his bead bag, held them in the air, looked at them, and said something to this effect: one day there may be no temples. One day there may be no devotees, but there will always be the holy name. And in another circumstance, someone reported something similar. It's not cross-verified, but it's in principle it makes sense. The shelter of the holy name should be for us such that the facilities that we presently have, Prabhupada was explaining, the facilities that we presently have may not be there sometime in the future. Perhaps, he didn't elaborate like this, but perhaps we'll have to go somewhere where there aren't devotees. I know there are some devotees where there aren't devotees. So how do you get association? You make devotees. You do what Prabhupada did. You follow in the footsteps and you take with faith in the chanting of the holy name. That's how Prabhupada began the Hare Krishna movement, with faith in the holy name and the teachings of Bhagavad-Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And similarly, I was told, and I can't remember who said this, same thing about his books. One day there may be no temples, no devotees, but there will always be my books. That is, he was leaving behind something that would last for generations. And, this famous 10,000 years, his teachings will be guiding light for 10,000 years. So when the temples are gone, we still have Bhagavad-Gita. Now, from 1968, which is when Macmillan Company first published Bhagavad-Gita, until today, do you have any idea how many Bhagavad-Gitas worldwide have been published and sold? That's a big number. It's an estimate because the book, the tallying wasn't done so carefully in the earlier days, but 58 million Bhagavad-Gitas. Given the population of the world, or it's not a gigantic number, but it's a gigantic number. 58 million Bhagavad-Gitas. Nothing touches it from any other edition of Bhagavad-Gita. And that's light. That's how, for many of us, light came into our lives through the message of Bhagavad-Gita. But not just the message of Bhagavad-Gita, Bhagavad-Gita as it is. I can say I personally read 7 translations of Bhagavad-Gita, none of which made any sense to me. I couldn't understand it. And then number 8 was Bhagavad-Gita as it is, and here I am. So many years later, a life of devotion and service to Srila Prabhupada because of Bhagavad-Gita as it is. At least that's how it started. And then there is, of course, Srimad Bhagavatam. And just this year, 2020, past year, 25,000 estimated sets of Srimad Bhagavatam were sold worldwide. Now that's a lot of light in this dark age of Kali. Now, how many people have opened the volumes? Many have not. But still, just having it sit on their shelf, it's more than auspicious. It's transcendental dimension. As we know, it's brilliant as the sun. And one day, by Super Soul's arrangement, or the Association of Devotees arrangement or combination, that brilliant as the sun light, living beyond our lifetimes most likely, persons will get light in this dark age of Kali. And so it's very important for us to live a life of dedication to His divine grace, to regularly read His books, of course, distribute His books, and regularly read His books. And from regularly reading His books, that's on the receiving end. And we all know from our experience, when you try to explain to others and share with others, you learn more than just by reading. You have to begin by reading or receiving. But when this practice of giving Krishna bhakti to others through the same teachings, however it's done, there are different formats and methodologies, but it's our life. It's part of a life of devotion. A life of devotion to our founder Acharya, along with the thorns on the path and the fires of ordeal and the obstacles and difficulties that are sent our way to test our steadiness and ardor, still continuing to receive and to give. That's our life. Receive and give. And we're in the care of, at the end of the day, at the end of each day, we're under the care of our founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada. And that's the inspiration that those who continue on the path of devotional service largely must have, is this strong faith and sense of shelter and protection from the teachings of our founder Acharya. And of course, that means his sincere, earnest, and honest, and true representatives. That's part of the shelter of Srila Prabhupada. Going forward in generations to come. So that's the topic that I want to discuss for this evening. A life of dedication to Srila Prabhupada. Dedication of service. So let's see if there's some comments or discussion. Oh. You going to read out the questions?
Comedy.
Huh? Okay.
Comedy is
okay.
Read out. We don't have any questions.
Okay. Anything in the room? Any discussion? Yes, over here.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. There was that point mentioned, like there might be no temples, no devotees, but there will be holy name. So with the past few months, like whenever like any sort of online event happens and all that, I feel like kirtans or anything in general, it doesn't have the same taste when it was physical or something like that. So I always feel lost when kirtans happen online. What do I do?
You do the best you can during difficult times. Count your blessings. At least you're in a warm apartment and you have health and you have family and you have friends. You know, some persons don't have the resources that you have, so you count your blessings. And when that period of time comes when you can again have kirtan, live kirtan and live worship and so forth, you'll probably appreciate it a lot more. So in between now and then, you're accepting of your circumstance. You count your blessings, stay healthy. Because those that contract COVID, it's really not nice. So stay safe and take advantage of the resources that Krishna has given. Many devotees have found that during this pandemic time, the access to speakers that they wouldn't otherwise get a chance to hear from, reading groups that they otherwise wouldn't be taking part in, and so many, there's, with the part of acceptance is see what's the plus and take advantage of the plus to help you get nourishment in your life of devotion to Krishna. Because you can't change the circumstance. It is what it is. Stay safe. Anyone else? Yes?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Could you please explain, I did not understand, when Shraddha, which is endowed with Ruchi for Bhakti, I did not understand that. Because I used to always think that for Ruchi and for Asakti or Nishtha, we have to work hard. And you said that...
I don't understand what your question is. Should I go back to the slide?
Yeah, I did not understand that point. Shraddha which develops for bhakti is endowed with ruchi. I do not understand.
Well, this is Jiva Goswami's language. Let me just go back. Shraddha, which develops for bhakti, is endowed with ruchi. So that's the starting point. Shraddha, which develops for bhakti, is endowed with ruchi. And then that's the contrast. Only the Shraddha, which is endowed with ruchi for bhakti, culminates in the symptoms of bhakti. In other words, you can have faith in something else. If you don't have faith in bhakti, which is endowed with ruchi, then a bhakti life, the symptoms of bhakti aren't going to develop. Someone can be a ritualistic individual. If they really don't have faith in doing for Krishna, then the symptoms of one who lives their life for Krishna is not going to manifest. Is that clear? So what on tomorrow evening, the topic is going to be this. It's going to be developing the qualities of a devotee that's necessary for just even being a human being. Because there's two-legged animals that move around and they don't have qualities of a human being. They have qualities of, Prabhupada speaking, the animal is the eating, sleeping, mating, defending, and the human life is something higher. And if one is just doing those things in a polished manner, it's animal life, polished animal life. And so the higher is targeting towards the personality of Godhead, and then good qualities manifest naturally. And so that's our topic tomorrow evening. But the symptoms of bhakti, that's the character, the other 25 qualities of a devotee, follow the one. Krishna Eka Sharana. You follow? Now is it clear? Okay.
Also,
Something else.
yeah. Can you explain Sharanagati and Sharanapati?
Yeah, it's apati, as you see on the slide, apati is attaining, and agati is moving towards. Sharana is the part that's the same. It's just a stage, attaining or moving towards. Just a different way of describing.
think I will read out Guru Maharaj the questions.
You okay? Fine.
So, Jayamanadevan Prabhu was saying, quoting Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's quote, God sends many obstacles and inconveniences to those who wish for shelter unto Him in order to test their order and steadiness.
That's it. There's the slide.
How to not let this understanding create a sense of apathy in us, but instead feel empathy in the heart and practically exhibit it in spite of this understanding.
Well, everything depends. The answer to his question depends on how well connected we are with the place of shelter. If we're not well connected with the place of shelter, we won't feel empathy. If we are well connected with the place of shelter, we will. It's a natural quality of a devotee, which is, goes back to her question. The characteristics of bhakti are manifest for one who actually has shelter. So we're not there yet. We're striving for, just like her question, we're striving for, but we're not there yet. And so sometimes we'll feel, spiritual feelings, and sometimes we'll feel material feelings because we're unsteady. But, to bring about steadiness, that's what this, so it will help us to let go of the attachments to the temporary and to take shelter of the eternal. I mean, it's similar to his question, what to do about the circumstance. Well, it's not going to change. So you accept it. And within the circumstance, you take advantage that if it weren't the circumstance, you wouldn't be taking advantage. And you get nourishment that way, and then you have another way of nourishment after this thing is over.
This question was actually Shri Radhika Mataji.
Okay, fine.
Jivan Prabhu.
Fine.
And then Gunchan Bharadwaj asks, Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Okay.
Very often, unfortunately, in this material world, we fall into the cycle of falling out of the connection.
The cycle of what?
Falling out.
Falling out.
Yes.
Okay.
And falling out of the connection by omission or commission.
Yeah, okay.
Such as in this pandemic time.
Yes.
How do you bring back the connection, especially to connect with your spiritual father? It is difficult given we are not able to see our spiritual master.
By sound. That's how. I am making this, me personally, you're a disciple. I am personally, for the past 4 months, without fail, every morning, every evening, every morning, every evening, every morning, every evening. And if you're busy doing other things during that time, you can hear the recordings as much as your time permits. And that sense of, just like you're doing right now, the question-answer interaction is, you're not in the same room, and it's not, as was stated, it's not the same, but it's connection, the connection through sound. And we're exploring important teachings for a life of a devotee to understand and to apply. Like, for example, I got a lot of feedback from the winter retreat topic of gratitude. It's very appropriate for the lives of devotees. Gratitude in difficult times. Gratitude in difficult times. And so, as you're falling out, as you say, or you may find yourself or you find a friend falling out, then to keep that connection, it's through sound. And you do what you do in service to Guru and Krishna, in your occupation, in your family life, and so forth. You make that connection in terms of the activities that you do them for Guru and Krishna, and you keep that connection vibrant through sound. Consider, Gulshan, when was the last time I associated with Srila Prabhupada? Good number of years ago. This is 2020, and Prabhupada left in 1997. So I haven't had his personal association in a long time. But there's sound. And I listen to his recorded lectures thrice daily, minimally, and read his books. So, there's opportunity. We all have busy lives, but when the opportunity of staying connected is there. When there's a will, there's a way, and you'll find the way, I'm sure.
Kishore Prabhu was asking, following footsteps of spiritual master, does a devotee has to undertake sannyas order of life in the path of devotional service?
Well, depends on how old you are. But that's not the meaning of following in the footsteps. Following in the steps is living your life according to the teachings and principles given. That's following in the footsteps.
There are multiple questions from YouTube. This question is from Prasad Raval. Srila Prabhupada said his books are good for next 10,000 years.
Yeah.
What should we do so that we can conserve at least few copies of Bhagavad-Gita after 10,000 years?
Well, take birth again after 10,000 years and keep them in a storage room, and then you can go distribute them. Hare Krishna.
He continues, Shraddha not being limb of bhakti, but the attribute of bhakti. Can you please elaborate on that?
Well, it's not exactly an attribute of bhakti. That's not what it says. It says, here we go. It's an attribute for the adhikar. So you don't, get it, what's being said by Jiva Goswami. There's an adhikar, or a qualification, for Shuddha Bhakti. So one of the attributes or features of the adhikar for Shuddha Bhakti is Shraddha in Bhakti itself. It's so faith. You won't get to Shuddha Bhakti. You won't have the qualification to get to Shuddha Bhakti if you don't have faith in Bhakti. So, okay, let's break that down. We're in the practicing stage of Bhakti. We're in the practicing stage. And to continue practicing, you have to have faith, because we're not there yet. We're not experiencing bhava and prema. We're experiencing, struggling and striving. So faith in the bhakti principle and the bhakti process and what it can do, it can connect you with Krishna. Then you have the means to continue along the path and reach Shuddha Bhakti. That's why I picked this little message, because a lifetime, to do something for a week or a month or 6 months or a year is one thing. To do something for a lifetime, it has to go deeper than, it feels good. So I do it because it feels good. It has to go deeper, and the deeper is the faith in the principle, whether it feels good or doesn't feel good, because there's going to be unsteadiness and ups and downs. So that's the explanation. It's not a limb of bhakti, but it's an attribute for the adhikar for Shuddha Bhakti. Next.
This question is from Ananda Prabhu. I would like to know ways to connect with spiritual master besides following the instructions and living life of gratitude in the ways pleasing to him?
Well, hear regularly. Start with that. And then to go back to Gulshan's question, then the connection is there. And within the connection, there's also a reinforcing of instructions and many, many other points of application of instructions and inspiration to do so, and so on. Okay?
And this question is from Paramakaran Prabhu. It was not Prasad. So Paramakaran Prabhu is saying, Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 22, 107, says, pure love for Krishna is eternally established in the hearts of living entities.
Yes.
Based on this, can we understand the answer as B?
Yes.
Seed has prema in it.
Yes, but if you answer B, it doesn't mean A is wrong. Okay.
Amara Mataji was asking, thank you so much for this heartfelt and heart-touching sharing. What's the difference between gratitude and conviction with regard to a lifetime of devotion?
What's the difference? Well, you know what conviction is. Dridha vrata, very determined. I have a deep conviction to follow. And gratitude is the feeling of, I've received something very wonderful. That's and I want to reciprocate. That's the difference.
And she has a second part, which says, what dilutes the deep feelings of gratitude that we are able to feel from time to time in our journey?
Symptoms?
Dilutes. What is the thing that dilutes the feelings of gratitude?
Dilutes the feelings of gratitude. Conditioning, complacency. I'm feeling okay, so now I don't have to, I can just relax and enjoy. Material conditioning, complacency.
This question is from Prakash Govindan Prabhu. Hare Krishna, dear Guru Maharaj, what's the best way to follow in your footsteps?
Well, that's what I've been speaking about. You follow and watch me, how I follow Prabhupada, and you, as best you can understand what that looks like, you do that.
This question from Sucharita Mataji. In Andhra Pradesh, in India, some miscreants are vandalizing the deities in the temple.
Really?
Trying to
In Andhra?
vandalizing the...
In Andhra?
Andhra.
They're vandalizing deities and temples in Andhra?
That's what she's telling.
I'm surprised.
In the name of trying to follow Srila Prabhupada.
I don't know anything about this, I'm sorry.
And this question is from Venkat Chiluka. What's the significance of lotus in lotus feet or lotus hand or lotus face of Krishna or spiritual master?
It's largely poetic. This is my understanding. There may be some other esoteric meanings of the significance of lotus, but my understanding is it's largely poetic, because a lotus is taken as a symbol of peace and tranquility and so forth. It's a place. Krishna's abode is shaped like a lotus, and his feet are on that lotus, so it's sanctified by his feet. And so the lotus feet, or lotus face, or lotus, it's poetic, indicating what I just said. I'm sure that there are grammarians and other people that have varieties of things to say about the meaning of lotus, but I'm not familiar with that.
Going back to Sucharita Mataji, so if something like that are happening,
Is what?
the deities are being...
I don't want to discuss it because I don't know anything about it.
And I don't know the name. How do we practice acceptance and consequently increase our shelter taking of Krishna when there is an unjust situation brought on by another devotee?
Well, the answer to this has everything to do with the same, the earlier question. What you need to do is take profound shelter in the personality of Godhead, and He'll give you the intelligence what to do. If you simply become, absorbed in the external, you'll be lost quickly. Even if you have, do this or don't do that, you'll still be lost, because like there was some. There was some discussion with one devotee about. We're okay?
Yes, sir.
About injustice. I won't mention the devotee's name. They can mention their name if they want. When we, how do you deal, when you value justice and you see injustice, how do you process it? So there are options that an intelligent person can consider, or in consultation with others who are intelligent, you can collectively and combinedly consider. But one thing for sure, don't abandon the place of shelter in the lotus feet of Krishna and his pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada. Never deviate from that position. And then once you're there in that place of shelter, then you can consider what options are available to you in dealing with the injustice, or at least, perceived or real injustice. And then it depends on what the injustice is and all the other details of circumstance.
Amara Mataji, she has another question. Is thinking of obstacles while considering a service an indicator of lack of gratitude?
No, it could be intelligence.
Sucharita Mataji was asking, why could Her Grace Yamuna Mataji not see Prabhupada's footprints?
Prabhupada said to her, you'll understand this after some time. He didn't say why.
Okay.
You have to ask Prabhupada.
And this question is from...
He's transcendental. And exactly what that means, you have to ask him.
This question is from Sarala Mataji. Maharaj, as you mentioned, you have studied Bhagavad-Gita in 9 different versions. Which version exactly resembles the Vyasa Maharshi's illustration of Bhagavad-Gita?
You got the number wrong, but that's okay. What Prabhupada said about Bhagavad-Gita without purport, he said most Bhagavad-Gitas, the verse by verse is pretty much the same, because it's very simple Sanskrit. So verse by verse is pretty much the same, but it's the commentary that differs. So without having proper commentary, one isn't going to understand Bhagavad-Gita. So the proper commentary is one that follows disciplic succession. And Vyasadeva is in our disciplic succession. So take it from there.
And this question is from Narahari Prabhu, or Soumya Mataji. Hare Krishna Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada says, chant and be happy. Do one have to practice Bhakti Yoga for a long time to experience that?
No. You could practice chanting for a long time, making offenses, and you won't feel the happiness. And one can chant in a short time without making offenses and feel great happiness. No, there's different experience for different persons. It's not just Krishna may, in other words, Krishna may show some special mercy. I'm thinking as we're speaking. I'm thinking of a 9-year-old girl who, when we went to their home, her mother was appreciating how her 9-year-old daughter gets up really early in the morning before everybody else in the house gets up, and she does her chanting, and she likes it, and it helps her do all what she has to do in school and schoolwork and this and that, and without it, it's like not the same. So it's not like she's a pure devotee or something. She's just getting some mercy, and the taste does come from purification, but purification doesn't necessarily take long time. Purification is based upon our attentiveness to that which, to bringing the faculty of attention to the sound of the name. Then purification takes place quickly. Difficulty is we're distracted, so attention doesn't go to the name, it's all over the place.
I think that's all the
Okay.
questions.
Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna.
There is an announcement.
Oh,
Yeah. Announcement by Comedy. Comedy, you said you want to share your screen? Okay. So the announcement says, we want to welcome all of the devotees to this virtual Vyasa Puja, and we are looking forward to spending this weekend with Maharaj and all of you. Tomorrow, our class starts at 7:30, and then the main Vyasa Puja ceremony at 10:15. So please join us on Zoom tomorrow to continue the celebration.
and this is Central Time. Okay, Hare Krishna. It's definitely not the same.